CBT Nuggets JNCIA series, Operational Monitoring and Maintenance. Well, I only have one bullet point, okay? And my bullet point is, I'll take hodgepodge for 500, Alex, okay? So just like Jeopardy, this particular nugget's going to be a hodgepodge of different monitoring and maintenance commands because I've actually covered probably, I would say, most of the monitoring commands and maintenance commands that you'll need. Okay, but we're going to talk about a couple of things here that that might have slipped through the cracks throughout this entire Nugget series. You know, NTP, Network Time Protocol. Need to talk about that. Need to talk about SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol, and some other commands that you might need to know for archiving, real-time monitoring, good stuff like that. So let's jump into our smorgasbord of operational monitoring and maintenance in our Junos operating system. So we're going to go through a bunch of small little scenarios for the types of things that you might do for monitoring and maintenance when you get on the job at Nugget Lab. You've already learned really the bulk of what you need to know, not only for the JNCI exam, but also when you get on the job. So let's take some little vignettes, I'll just call them that, of situations we're going to look at. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is this. We have created a bunch of configurations throughout this entire JNCIA Nugget series. And you may want to display different configurations, the set commands that you actually issued to build those configurations. Now we know we can do a show configuration, we can look at it with the hierarchy and the curly braces and all that, but sometimes it's really helpful to actually see the list of set commands that we use to create a configuration, and I haven't shown you how to do that yet. Now, one thing we could do is we could say, let's show and then put the pipe symbol up here and display our set commands. Now I can tell you this is going to give us quite a bit of output. You can see we've got several set system commands, we've got several interfaces, set route, set protocols, OSPF, our policy options. And these are some set security. This has all been disabled because remember, we took this thing out of security mode into router mode, right? So you can see what's going on there. But one thing that might be helpful is to get into the actual configuration, like get into edit interfaces, right? And in that hierarchy, then do the show display set, right? And so we can see here's our set interfaces command. And this is excellent because you can just take this stuff right here. You could go up here and edit and copy if you want to and just copy and paste it. Or maybe you want to copy this into a text file or whatever and store all of your configurations in a SharePoint document library or something. Okay, so that's a good way to do it. If I want to go, let's say, into the routing options area, I'll go top, edit, routing options, right? And then we can just do the same command there. Show, display, set. Here's our routing options command, right? Our static route with the discard, nailing up that route. There's our default gateway to the next hop. All right, did that one. What about OSPF? Okay, top, edit, protocols, and I can just stop there. I can do OSPF, right? And then we'll do that same show command. I'm just hitting the up arrow. Up arrow, show, pipe, display, set. There's my set protocols commands. There's my export policies, right? There's my area 0 settings for interface gig E001, gig E002, loopback 0. Okay, so that's a great way to display your configurations because we know that if we just do the show, it's going to show up in this configuration option here, you know, with the curly braces and the semicolons. And like I said in a previous nugget, it is a good thing to be able to look at this and to be able to issue commands, set commands, based on what you're seeing in this show configuration mode. Okay. Why? Well, because a lot of the examples you're going to see in Juniper documentation, white papers, other books, and so on and so forth are going to show you a lot of configurations just like this. But it's really nice to be able to recreate configurations by doing the show pipe display set command. Okay, so here's a scenario number 2. You're sitting at one of your routers at Nugget Lab, and you want to do some real-time monitoring in Junos, in the CLI, of activity on a specific interface. For example, let's say gig E000 unit 0. Okay, well, let's create some traffic on that interface, which happens to be the management interface. So let's go ahead and ping 192.168.3.5, and let's do a pretty like a large number. Okay, so -n 100. We'll start issuing that, and then we'll go back into here, and we are going to monitor. Oops, we got to go to operational mode. So let's exit, and then we're going to monitor interface. And it was gig E000, correct? And you can see now we're doing some real-time monitoring. You can see SNMP trap flags. You can see here's input bytes. So we've got input bytes, output bytes, and this is basically input packets, output packets. So local statistics, remote statistics on the remote device. Okay, so this is, we're actually doing this echo request, echo reply. You've got a timestamp up here. You also can see 26, 27, 28 seconds. So real-time monitoring. Notice down here, of course, you can hit N to see the next set of statistics, Q to quit or escape. I can freeze it any time. Okay, hit the F and it freezes it. T thaws it out. Keep on going again, right? If I do N, shows me the next set, right? Starts it all over again. Excellent. So real-time monitoring with the monitor interface command followed by the interface that you want to do monitoring of. Okay, our next scenario, our third scenario, involves good documentation. Okay, whenever you embark on a security lifecycle, one of the most important things you can do is document what you do all along the way. That's going to help you out, especially at Nugget Lab when you have dozens or more switches and routers. It'll also help people that follow in your footsteps. If you go to Nugget Lab, you'll be happy if somebody did some documentation. One thing we can do here is we can actually put comments when we actually commit something. So we've seen pretty much all the things you can do with commit, right? If we do a commit right now, we can see we've done commit and quit. We've done commit at a certain time, commit checks with which you're going to check the correctness. Commit confirmed. I did this in the previous nuggets. Commit confirmed 15 for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. One thing we haven't done is the commit comment. So let's go ahead and actually do something. Let's say we want to go in and delete the system services for Telnet. Okay. Now I'm actually accessing this router through the console session, so I'm not going to be disturbing any Telnet session. So I might want to do that. Okay, and when I do my commit, I'm going to say, okay, let's go ahead and commit, but let's do a comment. And we'll say, I disabled the Telnet service, in quotes. Now, let's go up one level, and we can do a show system commit. And we can see, here's our last commit, and you can see when it happened, okay, April 30th. And it says, by MGS via the CLI, what did you do? I disabled the Telnet service. And so that would really help to have comments here on all these commit statements, because otherwise it's kind of hard to figure out what you actually did. So let's go ahead and go back and let's set the system services for Telnet. And let's commit that. And we'll put a comment in there. This is a good best practice. I know that's kind of a redundant or an oxymoron. It's a good best practice. So we want to say re-enabled Telnet service. Let's do a run show system commit, just to remind you that I can put the run command in front of it if it's an operational mode command. Okay, don't forget that. So we can see a couple of entries here and what we did, what MJS did via the CLI. Okay, that's pretty cool. And we might also want to do this. We might want to say, let's show and do the pipe symbol a compare operator against, let's say, rollback 1. Okay, so we're comparing our current configuration against what's in rollback 1. And we can see in rollback 1, we went to edit system services and we added Telnet. Okay, so we can go and we can do these comparisons to compare. Don't have one there. See if I have one there. No. So we can go and we can see what's been done at different rollback phases, at different rollback steps, and we can compare it to our current configuration to help us decide if we want to roll back to 1 or roll back to 2 or 10 or 15 or whatever. And as we know, we can also roll back. We'll do a rollback question mark. I could have said no more, which would have been helpful. We can roll back to the rescue, right? Roll back to the rescue configuration. And I already showed you how to create a rescue configuration earlier on in this Nugget series, and it's an important skill to have as well. But I showed you how to do that in an area of operational mode called request. Let's go back to that request area, because I want to make sure that you understand all the things you can do there, because it's very important from a real world standpoint and an exam standpoint, especially when it comes to management. Okay, without a doubt, from a maintenance standpoint, the most important command that you can know about in operational mode is the request command, okay? And there's a whole lot of stuff that can happen under request. But let's just remind ourselves that request system configuration rescue save is how we create a rescue configuration that we can roll back to. Now, we've already done this previously in this Nugget series, but I wanted to remind you of that command. So another command that's interesting is the ability to list files in different directories. So I could say I want to do a file list, and I can actually look at my config directory, not config, but my config directory, and see the actual contents of that directory. And so you can see here's my rescue configuration.gz. Now let's stay on track with this rescue thing. Let's say in this scenario you're at Nugget Lab and you're getting ready to load a different release of the Juno software, or maybe you're going to reload the current release that you have on this J-series router, but you want to save the files that are already on the router. Okay, well, we could do a request system snapshot. Okay, request system snapshot. Then we could say, well, okay, what media do we want to save this to, right? And you can see we have options here. We can write this to the USB, okay, to a USB device connected. We could do it to compact flash or removable compact flash, right? So you need to know about that, okay? That's part of the request. And so this system snapshot, by the way, has quite a bit of stuff you can do there, right? You can do a snapshot and just get the files that are shipped from the factory, for example. Here's that media command, right? Also, before you install your software upgrade, you might want to delete old log files and old crash files. So I'll be in this request area, request system, but this time I'm going to do request system storage. And by the way, there's a whole heck of a lot that I can do here. One command, cleanup, okay? Clean up temporary files and rotate the logs. So that's a good command to do as well before you install your upgrade. And if you created these logs, by the way, you could see these by using that file list thing, okay? File list detail. Let's take a look at var temp, and not much going on there. Let's try something else. Let's go up and do var log messages with an asterisk. There we go, got some messages there. So these are the kind of files, by the way, that would be cleaned up with the request system storage cleanup command. Okay, things like that. Okay, let's get back to the top here. Don't forget about request system software and your options there. Here's where you go to add an upgrade package. Here's where you go to remove an upgrade package. Here's where you go to delete a backup. Here's where you go to roll back to a previous package or previous operating system. You can also validate package compatibility with your current configuration. So before you even go and add a particular package, you can make sure that your Juniper router will actually support that new package. Okay, so we could do request system software validate and then just put the reboot command in there and then put in the actual GZ file that represents your package. Okay, so that's a good one to know as well. Let's don't forget we have some good show commands, okay? We can do the good old show version command. Not shoe version, but show version command to look at our model and see our software release. You can also find detailed information about that. So we could do show version detail to get all the different daemons or components of this particular build, okay? We also looked at this one again earlier in the Nugget series. It was show system processes. That's a good one to know. I think I even gave you a test tip on some of the processes to remember, right? Don't forget we have show chassis commands. Those are good management commands. Show chassis hardware, for example. We can do a show chassis hardware detail. I think we've seen these already, but I'm just reminding you of these. Like I said, this is, hodgepodge for 500. So we want to make sure we have some of these. Let's say that you have a problem that has happened on your router, and you want to gather basic information before you contact technical support. Okay, you can use this command and you can save this file as, let's say, the support file. You would say request support information, and then you would pipe it to the save function, and then you would name the file, like, support file, something like that. Okay, so that's a good thing to do, to gather information, so you have that for tech support. Something else that's very important to know is how to use the help reference command. Okay, so if I do help reference, and this is also test worthy, right? You have a whole help reference database within your router, okay? So if I want to get help reference about, let's say, class of service, right? And maybe, how about the buffer size thing that we talked about, right? Talked about that in a previous nugget. So I want to get referenced help about the class of service buffer size feature. Type it in there, and you can see here's the syntax, right? Buffer size followed by percentage, okay? The hierarchy level, and this is an area where we were, right? Edit class of service schedulers, okay? You can see when it was released, what it does, and some of the defaults. And if you hit more, it just shows you all the different options you have, okay? So, and you can do this on basically any command. So remember, a couple of things that we want to know for tech support is this help reference. Maybe you can find the answer here before you call tech support. Okay, so don't forget about that. Don't forget also about request support information and saving it to a particular file. We can also do show system uptime. That's a good monitoring command. Okay, the current time, system booted, protocols started, last configuration. Okay. Let's talk about SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. This is a standard that's been around for a long time. We use this protocol to remotely manage routers, Juniper routers, switches, servers, workstations, basically any device connected to an IP network. It's been around since I was in networking in the 80s, mid to late 80s, and it's supported everywhere. A lot of different versions out there. The ubiquitous standard would be SNMP version 2C, okay, which basically uses a simple kind of community string, right? And so we want to know about that version because it's the most popular version. There's also an SNMP version 3 out there that provides security like IPsec does. It has mechanisms for confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. But we're going to be just looking at SNMP. By the way, SNMP uses UDP port 161 as a service, and the messages that it sends to the management station, the network management station, those are called traps. Now, those aren't the only kinds of messages that can be sent. You can also send what are called informs. Okay, so traps are what we normally send. The newer thing we can send are called informs. Informs have the advantage of they have some reliability built into them in the sense that they will let you know if the inform was received or not. Traps are just kind of like, one-way UDP, but informs actually monitor if the inform got there at all. Okay, so one thing we have to know is just basically how to configure. So we'll go to edit an SNMP agent on our Juniper router so that our network SNMP version 2C network management station can monitor this router. And by the way, SNMP uses a management information base, an MIB, okay, not Men in Black, but a management information base. And there's basically a component for everything on this Juniper router. I mean everything. So you have to be very careful, okay, because we have different ways that this device can be managed. Let me show you. We're going to set the SNMP. I'm going to do this first. I'm going to do a commit confirmed 5 minutes, okay? So we're going to set SNMP and then the community. This is the string, okay? So we'll put a question mark there. It wants to know, what is the community name? This is basically just a string of characters, right? So we'll call this Nugget Lab. Think of it as a password, right? And our network management station has to know this password in order to get traps from this router, right? Now, what type of authorization are we going to use? And that's the thing that's really tricky, okay? You have two options, read only and read write. Now, on the exam, you have to know that the default setting is read only. So I don't really have to do authorization read only because that's the default. Know that for the exam. But if you do read write, be careful, okay? Because not only can you read information from this Juniper router, but the write capability for a network management station that knows this community string Nugget Lab, they can actually use the SNMP protocol to make changes on this particular device. So that's a huge security issue. So typically you want to fall back on the defaults. If you're going to use SNMP version 2C with read write, technically a better way to do that would be to access this device with some type of IPsec tunnel, okay? A better solution than that is to use SNMP version 3 if it's supported, okay? So I want you to know about SNMP on the exam. Okay, let's talk about time. And what I mean by that is, remember, time is actually influenced by gravity. So it's actually a different time at the top of Pikes Peak than it is in Death Valley. It's not exactly 1 hour difference, okay? Why? Because of gravity. I'm just kidding. Okay, so let's talk about the importance of time. Now, when you go into Nugget Lab, you need to make sure that all of your devices, all of your routers and switches have accurate timestamps. In a small to medium-sized business like Nugget Lab, is it okay for you to go and configure time manually by simply setting it on your devices? Yes. Let's do a run show system uptime again. Okay. This is going to show you the current time, right? 4/30/2012, and then in UTC, or we call military time, it's 19 hours 13 minutes 17 seconds. Is it okay to go ahead and just use set commands to set the time manually and to set the date manually? Yes, it is if you have a handful of devices. Just make sure that they're set and they're at least close together, because you need to have accurate timestamps for your logs. We're going to talk about syslogs here as our final topic. And logging, any type of monitoring that you do, forensics, intrusion detection, incident management, certificate services with security, all of these things are going to rely upon accurate date and times on all of your devices. So like I said, we could set the date, we have a set date command. Oh, I know why, sorry. Believe it or not, we have to set this in in operational mode. So I forgot about that. I was in edit mode, but we set the date in operational mode. That's something to keep in mind, okay? You set the date in operational mode, but like time zone, you do that in edit system. It's kind of confusing. So could you go and set the new date and time? You can see here, you can set date and then also follow up with time and put, and this is the format, okay? But it's better to use NTP, okay? Network Time Protocol is a service that synchronizes the time against a master NTP server, which then may use a master clock on the internet, an atomic clock, for an example, that sets and synchronizes all of your devices. So for example, if I wanted to have my router get my time and synchronize with my NTP server, I would say set NTP. Oops, I gotta be in edit mode for this. All right, set NTP system. I even just said that. Okay, edit system hierarchy. Now I'm ready. Set NTP, and then you would say, what is the boot server? So what is the NTP server? Well, for me, it's at 192.168.3.21. That's my NTP server on this network. You could also just set the NTP server itself. Set NTP server 192.168.3.21. Okay, and so periodically, based on the NTP protocol, I'll resynchronize with that server and make sure I have the time. Now we can also set the NTP server and say I want to have more than one server. Okay, I want this one to be the preferred server, right? And then I can go ahead and have another set command. So I could have 3.20 is my preferred server, 3.22 is my secondary server, 3.23 is my other server. Now, if I've got an NTP server handy, I can also just go in and say, you know what? Let's just really quickly manually go and go to the top and say I want to edit, I want to set, that is, set the date. Nope, can't do that either. Okay, I thought I could use that command, but it's not working. Okay, so NTP, you definitely want to use that service. Now, I want to finish up talking about probably one of the most important monitoring and maintenance services that you should know about when you go into Nugget Lab, and that is syslog, or logging. So let's go ahead and finish up this very important nugget on the topic of logging. Now, one fact that I want to establish right off the bat is that in the Junos operating system, we call this logging, we call it system logging. Even though you might hear people call it syslog because it's a lot like syslog, technically speaking, it's not syslog. Syslog is a Unix service or function, okay? Cisco uses syslog, all right? But Junos uses its own system logging functionality. Yes, there are a lot of similarities, okay? For example, the log messages are going to be generated at different severity levels. And the lower the number, the more severe it is, okay? So, for example, emergency, this is level 0. It doesn't get any lower than that, okay? It's a system panic or something that's going to cause the routing platform to just come down, okay? It's catastrophic. Then we have 1 is the alert, should be corrected immediately, okay? A corrupted system database. So we want to request or reload, or we want to bring up some backup files. 2 is critical, okay? Critical conditions, like an error on your hard drive. 3 is an error, okay? Standard errors. A warning. Typically, you want to monitor at least at level 4. So if you're logging or tracing at level 4, what you're actually logging and tracing is everything from 4 to 0. So if you log at a particular level, you're going to get that level and everything that's more severe, okay? Level 5 is a notice. They're not error conditions, but they might require some special handling, okay? Take notice. The default level is level 6, which is informational messages. Now in syslog, there's actually a level 7, which is debug, okay? But these are the 6 levels that we want to know about. And by the way, these system logs, these are not the only logs you have, okay? You've got a bunch of log files on your J-series router. Let me show you where those are stored. If I do a file list command and I look in the CF directory, in the var directory log, this is where I'm going to see all my files, okay? I've got, log files for the HTTP daemon, install log files, inventory log files, but these are the message log files, okay? So these are the ones that we're really talking about, the system logs. Now I can view the logs in the console. I can have the logs saved to a file on my system. So let's say if I want to do that, let's say I want to go ahead and save my logs to a user-defined file. So I would say, let's set the system syslog, and it's interesting, they actually use the syslog command, even though it's technically not Unix syslog. It's a little bit confusing, okay? But I'm going to save it in a file called NL for Nugget Lab messages, okay, all caps. And then I have a lot of options here, okay? All these different facilities. And these facilities are just kind of different categories of stuff, right? Firewall logs, FTP logs, security logs, NTP logs. I could go ahead and say any, right? That'd be probably be a good way to go. So I could say, let's do any of them. And then I can say at what severity level, right? So here's my severity levels. Remember, critical is 0, going up, and then these aren't in the order, the numerical order. So let's go back to my example. Let's say I want to do warning messages. If I do warning, then I'm going to save these in a log file, and this is going to be located, and I'm going to write this in now, but it's in a location of var log. Okay, so I could do file list var log, and I would see this NL messages file there. Okay, so that's how you can save these logs to a file locally. And you could even say, I want to show log messages, not here though. I can show log messages, and I could pipe that and say, I just want to see the log messages from a certain date and time, right? So let's say April 30th, 12:00. Okay? If I want to temporarily send logging messages to my screen, to my console as I'm working, then I would say monitor and then start and then messages. Now, I don't want to do this, okay? Because once you do this, you're going to start seeing these syslog daemon messages showing up on your console. Now, you might want to do that at Nugget Lab. You might want to have these messages showing up on your console, but they can really get in the way of your configuration. So typically, we only do that for a certain period of time, okay? And then we do, monitor stop, and that will stop sending those. Now, if you want to send these to a log server, okay, we'll go to edit system syslog. I know it's crazy. It's not really syslog. Okay, go here, and then you would just say, I want to set the host, and mine would be 192.168.3.21. That's my syslog server for this network. Any facility, which is basically any category of syslog messages, as long as it's a warning or higher. Now, this command, going into edit system syslog and setting the host, you have to know that for the exam, okay? So keep that in mind. System logging is very important, and we've only scratched the surface, okay? But we've touched all that you need to know for the JNCIA exam, but you're going to want to, within the first few weeks of your being on the job, whether you use a Kiwi syslog server that you get from SolarWinds or some other syslog server, you're going to want to really dig into this. This is going to be a major aspect of your ongoing monitoring and management of your routers and switches, because you can go a whole lot deeper into this in filtering it out and showing different views and really customizing the way this works. But that's a good getting our feet wet, okay, with system logging. All right, in operational monitoring and maintenance, we pretty much looked at a bunch of extra information that relates to monitoring and maintenance. We finished up with looking at things like system logging and NTP, SNMP, and a bunch of other things under the request area that we need to be familiar with. Some other goodies with the commit command. So just a bunch of great little scenarios that'll help you fill in the gaps, along with all of the other monitoring and maintenance commands I've shown you in the other, 15, 16 nuggets of this nugget series. Now, let me just tell you this. Technically, if you're here just for exam prep, you could stop here, okay? We have one more nugget in this particular JNCIA series, and that's on IPv6, okay? I'm adding that nugget as a value add at the end because it's at this particular point in time, April 2012, it is important to understand IPv6. You really shouldn't start your networking career without it. So if you already understand IPv6 and you know how to implement it on a Juniper router, then you could actually skip the final nugget. Okay, it will not be covered on this JNCIA exam. Okay, IPv6 is not covered. It's a value add. So with that being said, I hope this CBT nugget has been informative. I want to thank you for viewing.